Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of Ideal Me. I am Lamar Whitby, and today our guest is interdisciplinary artist, internationally known, born in born and raised in Asheville, North Carolina, um, currently in Durham. But if you could welcome my guest, my homie, Sherrill Roland. So Sherrill, how goes
Yes,
it?
sir. It goes well. Goes well on this Friday morning. I'm good. How are you?
I'm chilling, man. I'm chilling. So you been on the road a bit?
It's about to get started. I've been on the road a little bit here and there, trying to make some things work here in North Carolina.
Yeah,
Working with a couple artists that are helping me fabricate some work. So just
yeah.
been a local road miles. But hopefully, hopefully it doesn't get COVID doesn't keep spiking, because I'm excited to kind of get back out, and do as much as I can, new workshops and stuff at schools. It usually picks up during academic school year when I can go out, talk, and discuss things around my work.
Yeah, you said COVID, you hope COVID doesn't continue to spike. Like how you feel about it? It's kind
Uh,
of weird.
I mean, yeah, I ain't never experienced nothing like this before, and we kind of, been reactionary over the last year or so.
Yeah.
Seems like we got a little bit of a fresh air when, it for those who are vaccinated. I think, it gave us a little more possibility of like hugging our loved ones closer again when we were separated, um,
Yeah.
in a spectacular fashion, in the sense that it was unexpected, that you realized you wasn't going to be able to travel to see like your mom or something for a long time. You know what I'm saying? Or to a time that
Right.
was like undetermined. So now, the news is picking back up, got variants and all kinds of stuff. It's just kind of like,
Yo, I saw something yesterday that said something about not even Delta. It's this joint called Lambda.
yeah, the variant, the second one.
I'm like, what in the world is that? It's crazy. So you need like six more shots to get your life together.
Yeah, it's wild. And like, I'm no scientist. I ain't never dealt with this type of stuff before. So it's like, I don't even know where else to go to get a second opinion about this stuff. It's like,
Exactly.
yeah.
I so you're an artist, right? It's interdisciplinary. You use a variety of media to get your point across, to say what you need to say, right? And I think
Yes.
correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things that jumped your career off was the jumpsuit project.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That was a performance piece that I started at UNCG as a thesis project.
Okay. So what exactly, I mean, I know, but what exactly is the jumpsuit project?
Yeah. Yeah. So UNCG is the University of North Carolina in Greensboro. For those who may be listening who are unfamiliar, but it is a socially engaged performance art project. And I know that may sound weird, but basically it's just me doing this work um, in the public. It needs people in order for it to be activated. It needs engagement. That is the work. That is the art. Conversation being had, spontaneous conversation being had, is mostly the art making. So nothing is actually like physically made, other than the conversations, and thought provoking engagements in odd spaces. But it all began when I tried, when I got in grad school in 2012, which seems very, very, very long time ago. But that's, it's the premise of the whole project and why it was so important to go back to UNCG to do this work. Is when I began grad school, that's when I was met with false accusations that set charges, felony charges against me in our nation's capital of Washington, D.C. And that's how I began grad school, with 4 felony charges out and a warrant out for my arrest in Washington, D.C. And I've never lived in D.C. I've traveled through D.C. for sure, but it was a shock. I hadn't been to D.C. At that time in 2012. I hadn't been to DC since like 2009, 2010. So I was like, you crazy. Like, when I got the news. And ultimately I just reacted like, I didn't do anything. I don't even know what you're talking about. You go handle that and make, tell me when it's off, because I didn't do anything, but it was a lot more serious than that. And, I fought it for a year. There was no evidence or witnesses to take me to a jury trial. So they lowered the charges from felonies to misdemeanors and took me straight to a bench trial. The following year, my last year of grad school in 2013, and that's when I had a trial. And I subsequently lost, was sentenced to a year and 30 days in prison. And because Washington, D.C. is a district and not a state, any sentence that's a day over a year is federal. So I was supposed to go to federal prison. They wouldn't let me know where I was going, like where my destination was. And so I'm fast forwarding through this, but all of this was like an up and down roller coaster. Can't believe this is happening to me type of situation. But at every moment, at every stage of it, you're just focusing on it. So it's like before the trial, I was just focusing on like trying to get my schoolwork done,
Right.
while having these cases over my head, not talking to people about it, because like I don't talk about the charges, but just for sake, it's like, don't go out in the world telling people like, oh yeah, Craig, they say they caught you stealing boxes, and you like, I ain't been stealing no boxes, you know what I'm saying? And if it worked the way you want it to work, like obviously you didn't steal no boxes, so you didn't get convicted. Then everybody else is gonna be like, you remember that time they said they caught you stealing boxes? You know what I'm saying? You just gotta attach to your name. So it was advised, the advice I was getting to me was like, yo, don't tell nobody you in this situation, kind of keep going. And if it ends the way you expect it to end, it would just disappear and nobody will ever know. You know what I'm saying? But in my situation, it didn't. And I actually went to jail. So back to like the part of like not knowing where I was going to go as far as like a federal penitentiary situation. It could have been any Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday was the wake up call. My mom didn't know, and I didn't know, but I watched many people come and go every morning. And then 6 months in to my year and 30-day sentence, that's when I figured out they were just going to keep me. So it's like for 6 months straight, I just was like, I have no idea where I'm going to end up. I could go any day to New Jersey, West Coast, like anywhere.
All right. Hold on one second. Because like you breeze through it like it's really that. Like I know you replayed this a million times in your mind, and like you probably told this story a bunch, but it's not that simple, right? Like what was that initial call like to say like, yo, you about to get locked up? Like we have you on these charges. Like what's the risk?
Yeah, I mean, so essentially they wouldn't tell me the charges over the phone. They said I had to come turn myself in and they'll provide me with more information. They just said all they could tell me at this time was that I had a warrant out for my arrest. And so like they were afraid that if they told me like that I would run, like, oh, like, because if it's something like, again, like, oh, they caught you stealing boxing, you're like, man, like that ain't nothing. But if they be like, oh yeah, we got you on attempted murder, you might be like, yo, or if, because they don't know. Yeah, because they don't know. They thinking they called somebody who did it, you know what I'm saying? And I'm listening to somebody tell me I did something that I didn't do, So It's just like a matter of perspective. But yeah, so ultimately I went up to DC after that phone call, like a day or two after that phone call, and turned myself in to the magistrate Monday morning and everything. But like at every occasion or instance of this whole experience that lasted, which seems like a long time, was like a big deal. Like even I flew up on a weekend. I missed the first day of grad school because I had to turn myself into the magistrate on a Monday morning. But I had to turn myself in another precinct in DC where this detective was who made the phone call. so early that I could get on the bus and be seen by the judge Monday morning. Because if I wasn't seen by the judge Monday morning, then they would keep me handcuffed and in jail until the following morning. And my last name starts with the R, so they go alphabetically. And so he was like, "Yeah, you gotta come, you gotta get here early." So I had to turn myself in around like, I think it was like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And then what I didn't know was like the process of that even. Like I didn't know I had to really like get arrested. Like I came for court. I came suited, not suited, but I came like dress shirt, dress shoes,
Right.
you know what I'm saying, stuff like that. And as soon as I got to the thing, they was like, "Oh, okay." And they came out very slowly, whatever. But yeah, I got handcuffed, belt was gone, had to turn over my possessions, cell phone, wallet, all that stuff, shoestrings, got interrogated in a room, like, got put in a jail cell with no bunk pads, just to wait
The,
to be taken to the Pennsylvania Avenue where the big, by the National Mall and stuff, the
the
courthouse.
moment the moment you showed up, like you just ready to talk to the judge, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yo,
yeah. I
I'm
thought,
here. I need to clear my name.
I thought it was gonna be like, like I got in a speeding ticket before. That's what I thought it was gonna be like. Like I came here for court, you know what I'm saying? Or
Right.
just, just tell you like I ain't do it, showing up for that reason. Like, what I'm saying? I ain't do nothing. So let's get this over with. But, I
When
should
they
have
put the
been there.
cuffs on you though, when they say
Yeah,
like turn around, put these cuffs on,
yeah, yeah.
what is what are your thoughts?
Oh man, I didn't know. I like, I'm asking like, "Whoa, we gotta do this." Like, what I'm saying? I didn't think I was going in the back. I didn't know any of that. And, in hindsight, I should have went with a lawyer. But it was just me. I thought I could live in my truth. You know what I'm saying? Like I ain't got nothing to hide. So I went and they tried to be very gentle about it, you know what I'm saying? But as we got through the interrogation, which didn't last long, I got put in a jail cell. Um, I had to wait for the bus to be transported to the bigger courthouse that was downtown. And that was like a whole different experience because then I got put with everybody. And I'm talking like weekenders, like people who've been waiting on Monday. It was so busy and it was so nasty. Like there was people who would be sitting against a wall because we were all in one big room, like no chairs. Everybody either had to stand or sit at the base of the wall. And I remember one dude got up from the wall and I was like, "Bet I can sit down now." And I walked towards the wall and he left a smell in the concrete, like in the space. And I was like, and again, not to be weird about it, but like I'm in church outfit, you know what I'm saying? And I'm too nasty because like once we got to the bigger jail, they had to shackle me. So like as you can imagine, walking in hard bottom dress shoes with shackles on your ankles, like up to your wrist, like trying to be seen by a court is crazy. And to wait for like a court appointed lawyer is so disconnect. It was like crazy. I could go on about those moments. But yeah, it was nuts. I mean, at any moment, like, there's times where you are bewildered, scared. I was scared, all this, like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening now. But then you can only focus on things are moving so slow as far as the fear in your head, but things are moving very fast in reality in a sense. Like, like every moment seems longer because you're afraid, but
Right.
things are kind of moving along as the days going on because like things are actually happening. Like, I had to go to court, I had to be seen, I had to get a court appointed lawyer, I had to meet him, try to talk to him. And he ain't really trying to hear all what I'm trying to say because right now I'm shackled. I'm like, "Yo, I don't know what's going on. I ain't do nothing. You gotta get me out of here." Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm like freaking out.
Yeah.
And
And in that
you know,
situation, everybody's innocent, right?
yeah, he ain't trying to hear it. And he's a court appointed lawyer who are most of all are overworked. Um, it's just
Big
a
time.
messed up system. But he slid me like after we did all of that, and he was able to talk to them, and the court was able to grant me the ability to go back to North Carolina because they weren't going to allow me to leave. Like I lived in DC. Like, what are y'all talking about? Like I'm missing school today. I have school tomorrow, and they was like,
Right.
cool. They made the arrangements. I had to call the clerks of courts every week, whatever. But like once I got out of Pennsylvania Avenue, out of that courthouse, it wasn't the same place I turned myself in. It wasn't the precinct. So
Mm-hmm.
they let me out of court. I had no belt, no shoestrings, no wallet, no phone, no money. Midday afternoon, I had a flight that evening. So it was like, I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I don't even know DC like this. I can't call nobody because I ain't got no money, so I can't use the payphone, and I ain't got my cell phone. And the court-appointed lawyer slid me $20. Like, yeah, bro. And I went back to the precinct off a cab, and it took all the money. And then when I got to the precinct to get all my stuff, you know what I'm saying? They said they had to keep the cash that I was carrying because their finance office holds the cash, but there's another office that holds the physical stuff. So I was able to get my wallet, but they kept my cash. And so they was like, you got it. I'm sorry, it's closed. It's after 4 p.m. Our cash office is closed. I said, well, that ain't my fault. I was in court. Like, I was like, you know what I mean? And it was the beginning of like what just like this interaction back and forth between the court of just like being really impersonal, like no sympathy, just very regimented in ways that are just like, you can be just swept away and taken advantage of. It just becomes numbers. Like, like you're
Yeah.
in, you're out. Don't want to hear none of that. This is how it works. Keep it moving. Next,
Right.
like, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so yeah, it was wild. I made my flight, flew back home, and was just kind of like, what is going on?
What are
And then I
your
started grad school the next day.
when we think about, especially being a Black man, when you think about being taken into police custody, especially under like false accusations, but being taken into police custody, and a lot of us, we hear these stories, you see it on the news everywhere, like some people just don't make it back.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, the detective
Alive, I mean.
yeah. The detective that took me in was Black, and yeah, no, it's the disconnect of being arrested and taking away the ability and power within that structure of like a police department or a jail or a prison. It's just kind of like everything that goes on in here is not accessible from outside. And the abuse of power that can happen within those walls is just kind of like, I mean, if I'm the one with the cuffs on, immediately public opinion is that my point of view isn't valid because
Right.
I'm the one in handcuffs.
Right.
So it's like that climb is just very tough. That position is very tough. I mean, I don't think we said it, but eventually I was exonerated and all this was turned over. But like every
Mm-hmm.
time people ask me how it was when I was locked up, like, did I get into anything? I would tell them I got into more stuff with the correctional officers than I did with any other person wearing orange. And it was just kind of like that. It's just kind of like that
Right.
abuse of power or that diminishing my ability to actually have a point of view or an opinion or be validated with what I'm saying. Like all that stuff was just like a recipe for friction, you know. And who's to really check them, the people who are checking us, right? Like who's really double checking that abuse of power if they have it, or because at the same time it's like, yeah, I took his rights away. Yeah, I took, yeah, I moved him off the block and put him in isolation. Why? Because da 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 da. And they never gonna ask me because I'm wearing orange,
Right.
or they're gonna look at my charges and be
Right.
like, well, you in here for a reason. This is part of your punishment.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And it's just just a crazy dynamic.
How did you or how do you like deal with that? Or like
Now
are you
or in there?
yeah, I mean, because that's a traumatizing, in a lot of ways, that's a traumatizing event
Yeah.
or chain of events, right? So
Yeah.
are you, I hate to use, for lack of better words, like, are you over it?
Yeah.
Have you dealt with it?
Yeah, I'm dealing with it. I don't think I'll ever be over it.
Of course.
There's still some things to this day that come up, and I still find myself be tight. Yeah, this ain't never going away. Like I could just feel it, and even though it's very rare when I tap back into those feelings, like to get me very angry, I do recognize that in myself. Like, yeah, I am trying to move on more than I am in phrasing it as a way of like repressing it. So I think with my moving on, I have more in my life now as opposed to not having. I have more additional stuff in my life. I think repressing is when like I'm still living in it and I just trying to deny it or put it somewhere.
Okay.
And I think right now I don't have to live with it on a daily day in that way, that specific instance. And I move on because I have other stuff to move on with.
Okay.
But the nice part about the work, the project specifically, the jumpsuit project specifically, in that whole academic school year when I wore that orange jumpsuit back in college, after I got exonerated, is that was like me dealing with it every day, me kicking and screaming with talks to myself, right? Like, I don't want to wear the suit today. I don't want to
Yeah.
go out there and talk to nobody today. But it was like, in a weird way, I always tell people it was a selfish idea for me because of what I knew that I was dealing with on a day to day, right? And I couldn't repress it. I couldn't. People were telling me like, just move on, get over it. Like, I can't do it. It's like in front of my face everywhere I go. I can't get through it. All I gotta do is the only thing I know to do is like actually go for it, like get in it, get head on with it, have conversations. And that project was a way of like not
That was
only forcing myself to be active in it every day, to wear it out front, to not try to hide it or dodge it in conversation, but to also confront society, which was part of the fear, right? Like after going through this, I had been in situations that society was putting back upon me, right? Like because of this experience had changed how people labeled me or saw me out in the world,
Mm-hmm.
even with like trying to get back into school, like, even though I was exonerated, the fact that I had been in prison or jail or whatever, they second guessed my authenticity of a clean record. So like I had to go through another background check, so they withheld my enrollment until I went through another background check. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm telling you, I didn't, do anything, but because I have this experience now, people are second guessing me, don't want to trust me. They're putting me through extra hoops. And so it was like I'm just being confronted with society of like how I'm being treated, what's because of my experience that I'm giving outward. You know what I'm saying? And
Did you ever second guess it? You said they second guess you, but did you ever second guess yourself in that situation when they were
uh
saying when they were just taking you through all these hoops and everything?
no, no, it just it was more so, what do you call it, like not reoccurring, but like not relapse, but like where it was like the situation was happening all over again. It just pulled me back into situations where like I need a lawyer to speak on my behalf because they're just not trusting what I say. And it's become very formal, it's become impersonal. It's not a personal, right? Like I just can't go to the dean of enrollment or whoever I need to talk to, and just chat with. Like, yo, you want to know some things? Like, let's just book a meeting and we have a chat. Now
Right.
it's like, nope, we don't want to hear anything. We're, it's a business. I don't even know who I'm emailing. You know what I'm saying? They're just like, this is the third party background check. You gotta fill out. When these records come back, we'll let you know. And I was like, well, you know, you guys are letting me know this. Like, school's already started.
Right.
The deadline to registering for classes, and because you red flagged my application, it's withholding my ability to register for this semester.
Right.
So like I have until Friday. The university has given all students until Friday to register their classes, or you don't go. And I was like, when will this background check come back in? They were like, I don't know. I said, well, what if it comes back after the deadline? Will y'all like work it back out to where I go to school? And they were like, no, because if we make an exception for you, we have to make exceptions for everybody else. I said, yeah, but I ain't did nothing. Like, and then it's like I'm all on my feelings. Like, I ain't did nothing wrong. Y'all the ones put me through all these. You know what I'm saying? Like, but ultimately, as you know, like it all worked out. It came back like 2 days before that Friday, and I was able to just register. But it was like, that's what it took. Like, they weren't even communicating really with me. They were really, university was talking to the heads of the art department, and then the art department would relay that to me. And I was like, yo, you can have my lawyers. They said they're willing to talk to you. Like I was, for giving everything. I mean, like giving them everything that they need, but yet it was just kind of like, nope, 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 nope. But again, it makes you feel helpless. It makes you feel like, you have no power. Your voice, your truth in ways has no power. Like you're not even hearing my truth. You only
Yeah.
hear it if it comes to you in a certain way,
Yeah.
and that's
Looking at oh, I'm sorry.
no, I was just saying that's a very tough tough position to be in.
Hmm. Looking at the person that you were prior to this experience, right? Uh, and looking at the person you are like sitting here now, how do these two people, how do they compare, and how do they contrast?
Um, I think I don't know. I mean, I know that they're different, but it's I can say now that I had to, with the jumpsuit project and how I've been growing over the last couple of years after being exonerated. It was just kind of like relearning myself and being okay and accepting who I am now. Like there was a thing of like at a time where I was like, I don't know who I am now, and I don't know who I am out in this world, but I know who I was before this thing happened. How do I get back to that person?
Mm-hmm.
And but the reality of that is I can't get back to that person. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like you've moved on, you've grown. And so I had to relearn myself. I had to understand how and ways that I have changed, you know, and really the second part about that is like actually be okay with it, you know? There's like, you know, there's recognition in who you have become, but then there's like ways to interpret that. Either you can be okay with that or you can really hate it, hate yourself in those ways, and then try to go, you know, you end up taking your path. And I think for me, I had to really accept it, find purpose in it, and kind of that's kind of how I kind of moved on with it. So like I don't necessarily like have any, oh, I used to be this or used to be that. I know that's still me, but I know
Right.
that I'm also all this other stuff now. So it's really interesting of like how many people I met on this new journey and the the reactions I get of this me now. And I'm like, wow, people didn't used to say that about me. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, people never really looked at me that way. So, you know, sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's, you know, just I'm indifferent. Like, oh wow, I didn't know I was like that now. But yeah, you know, that's how it is. I think I feel older. I feel like I spent the block up one too many times, just feel kind of over a lot of things, just feel older, settled, seated, you know. I don't
Yeah.
feel as new and as uh, I don't know the words to say it, but yeah, I was free to roam, and I think now as a rock, I've rolled too many times now. It just feels like I'm ready to just be still, you know. And sometimes
Yeah.
just feel older, weighted.
That
Yeah.
was
So
that was cool. That was cool. You go from excuse me, you go from the jumpsuit project to 168 804,
yeah.
right? And I'm sure you have more stuff, but that's a that's a transformation.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
Mm-hmm.
in your work and you just everything. So what what is that? What led to where you are now in your work?
Yeah, I think so. Like with the jumpsuit project, that's a very direct response through art, communicating what I was dealing with. Right. So with the jumpsuit project being me wearing an orange jumpsuit that's visually represent has a representation of incarceration, putting that in a school area, and just injecting it into a school community. That was like what I was living, right? So it was like I went from school to prison, came back to school, looked around school, and was like, all this has changed. The way that I see the school changes, the way that I see academic institutions, not only that, but the architecture. You know, when I see white concrete walls, I think of prison. I used to think as an artist and as an art student, free room to work, you know, to hang a piece, to do that. So like that juxtaposition and uh, counter response to this architecture now led me to have that like funnel all of that through the jumpsuit project. And then I did the next work, which was like art forums that I kind of described the process of Art Forum International Magazine. It's an art magazine that I got a subscription in jail. Somebody got me a subscription, and I had it sent in to me in jail. And it was underneath my bunk. I slept on top of it, did the time with me as each month grew, and I was allowed to take them home. And so when I made the work, I blended the magazines up in a blender and water and remade it into paper, and then like reconstructed the material. And the idea around that concept was like, out in the art world, Art Forum magazine is a very big deal. It's an international magazine that has higher praise. Now you take that and you change the context and put it in jail. What use is it in jail? Doesn't mean anything,
Right.
And then you take it out of jail and put it back in the world, and then what type of value does it have? That, and that was kind of like a parallel or a metaphor, or analogy to my life. Like at one point, there's these values of being higher educated out in the world, and that's where I was. And then I went to prison, and then all of that didn't matter.
At all.
That character, that representation, everything that I had built immediately went away once I went to prison. And
Right.
then I got spit back out, got exonerated, then went back to school. Then it's like, what's the context of that now? Is this experience valuable? And that was like the parallel of like the art form and my life. And I guess is what I'm trying to say is that like how I got to the 168, 804 is how my life is kind of like how my life and art are intertwined, and the expressions of it is kind of like how I'm dealing with the experience. How I express myself with this experience through art is showing as the art grows. So like at a time where it was very direct and very heavy on me, now it's becoming a little more abstract visually, less direct, indirect, very broader conversation
Right.
within the work. And that's just kind of how it is, because like, I got released August 2014, but I wasn't exonerated till December 2015. So it's been a while. But we had this conversation back in 2016 when I was wearing that suit, it'll be different, much different type of tone I would have. I'm able to smile and kind of be light about it now, but it's just, it would have been different because I was closer to it then.
Right.
But now that I'm further removed, that's kind of how it's coming out through the work, how I'm expressing it. It's just, I'm able to have different vantage points about that experience that is still producing to, in my opinion, interesting work, and providing more access to the work for people who come to see it, as opposed to somebody who just doesn't have much access to an orange jumpsuit,
Yeah.
just different ways of entering the work and engaging in the work. And I think now it's becoming a little more open, and indirect response. Like, yeah, it's all rooted for me from incarceration, but it's now addressing bigger topics or bigger opening for people to kind of put themselves in the work.
You said in your opinion is interesting, but I guess based on your trajectory and the things that you've accomplished in the art world, it's interesting to other people too.
Yeah, that was really, that's really nice. And it's really nice to be received. It's really nice to have the work being received and respected in those ways. And it's challenging me to think about how much can art do? Can art actually like help other people? It has helped, that jumpsuit helped me, but in giving myself in that space of conversation and interacting with people, other people I interact with also give. So it was a way that with that jumpsuit project that everybody involved was giving, and it became more powerful, and they took it to wherever they came from, like took it back to wherever they came from, and it just kind of spread. And so
Yeah.
that was really nice of like, and at that time I was very interested in not making physical work, but something that nobody or no institution could take from me. So like the experiences of time of gathering and talking, that's ours. Like this time is ours. It'll be shared, but this time is ours. Nobody can take that away from us. Like the things we talk about or get close with, like that's things I picked up in prison. Like, the one thing that we did have value was each other and the time that we had together, saying, to build, talk through situations, talk us down out of situations, like, all
Yeah.
that was valuable, because everything else, they made sure, the jail and the whole system made sure that we knew that we were invaluable, and so that's why that jumpsuit project ended up going so far, because the way everybody had to be active in it, and we had to connect, and that I knew that was like something that, it only can be seen in photographs now, but at the same time, those who have it own that experience and go out, and it stays longer because of the
Right.
participation.
I look at have you ever seen the show For Life
Mm-mm.
about I believe his name is Aaron Wallace, right? So he was I think it's like based on a true story. So I watch it on Hulu a lot. But the guy was um falsely accused of some stuff. He had a nightclub and all that. But anyway, he was in jail. He became a lawyer while he was in there. Um, then when he got out, or even while he was in there, he was representing himself and like other inmates, right? So looking at yourself though, not saying that you're a lawyer, but when you take your journey, um, your perspective, looking at how the world operates now, do you see yourself in like sort of the a similar like this is my I became this when I was there. I was already a certain type of person, but I became this when I was there. And now it's my responsibility to do X, Y, and Z. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, for sure. I don't think it's more so like survivor's remorse or anything like that. Like, oh, I'm the only one made it out. But a lot of times when with the people that I did engage with deeply, right? Like really got to know, built relationships with while I was locked up, the perspective that I got, like I could complain all day to my mom or somebody that wasn't hadn't experienced this, but like to the other men that I was in there with, it was like, yeah, I was in there wrongfully committed, but like, other people were in there wrongfully committed. Other people were getting abused as far as like their sentencings on their cases. So they have families. I had a brand new family. Like we all had these things going on, and so some of these men in there just had like tough stories, tough breaks, things to share, and that type of perspective that I had when in there. Like I learned a lot. Like like of understanding my situation better because of the tutelage or the experiences that they were able to kind of give to me in proximity. Like one of the guys I worked with, he was facing life. He ultimately got life. His co-defendant got 56 years to life. So like working out with a man facing life, he has two teenage kids and stuff like that. Like, like being close to this type of hardship was just like a different type of way of positioning my hurt and pain also. So like coming out, again, like when I got out, I wasn't free. I wasn't exonerated just yet. I had probation time and wasn't allowed to leave DC. And like, I had a whole slew of obstacles. And by the time it got exonerated, I was already kind of exhausted. I mean, for a number of different reasons, but just kind of like, y'all finally got it. You know what I'm saying? But I have been telling you this from the very beginning. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And finally got it. And how am I supposed to feel? I feel extra played. Like, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
extra played. And
Like you really
to
just snatched all this time away from me, and I was trying to
all
tell
this,
you.
all this. And I went through every part of I got a little taste of everything. The preliminary stuff, like awaiting trial for a year and a half, fighting against felony charges, fighting against misdemeanor charges, then doing the time um, in a city center jail. You can Wikipedia the DC jail. Like, what I'm saying? People were committing suicides, hanging themselves over the banisters. Like, I never saw that, but it was like violent. Like the jail had to remodel doors and facilities. Like it was terrible in there. And coming that, then having to be on probation, having that type of life for a while, and then have it all overturned. And I'm like, y'all done ran me through it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I got a little taste of everything, and then um, getting out of it because at first people wasn't listening when I was in it. Probation. Nobody want to hear the probation officer. Yeah, whatever. Like you didn't do it, so what? You
Right.
just better be here, and you better drug test here. Like what I'm saying? Like that's
Right.
it. And so when it was over, you know, then it was like I was able. Now people can somehow have a more compelled interest to hear me you know. But when I do tell them about me, it's not really all about me. You know, I have to speak about the other people I was in there with and the other people I met along the journey, because their voices matters too. Those experiences should matter too. You know what I'm saying? The whole
Right.
that criminal justice system is like really abusing people, and the statistics shows, you know. And so yeah, I have to kind of like, I mean, I feel compelled too, like, you know what I'm saying? It's not about me, because I you know, I was lucky enough to find art to express what I was going through. But you know, there's many stories of like, you know, Khalid Brower and everybody else. Like, and there's like, God, he slips my name, slips the name. But there was also a guy in Winston Salem who, you know, spent a lot of time. They ended up making an HBO documentary about him. I'm just terrible with names, but
I'm
you
worse.
know, you know, he ended up, you know, committing suicide and stuff like that afterwards, after getting exonerated and all that stuff. So it's not an easy thing, you know, and so like, yeah, it's not that like my details particular to my experience, they do matter. It shows a humanity, a different perspective on it, but also all should matter. Like, you know what I'm saying? In a weird way, I am an avatar. There's a lot more people who haven't made it out of it yet. There's a lot more people who still are in it. So, you know, I can't deny or ignore the fact that action, putting that in action, telling my story, I'm actually hopefully exposing something that somebody else doesn't have the opportunity to do yet. So
Right.
like, you know, I'm just trying to do my part. There will be people after me, unfortunately, but it's also fortunately, hopefully, that they do get the time and the space to share their voice. You know what I'm saying? To
You,
share their stories.
you said that the the gentleman, he was he was exonerated, but he ended up committing suicide.
Hmm.
Right. And then you said you was talking about the location where you were and how traumatizing that was. But then you
Hmm.
were released, right? So what's the relationship, or what should the relationship be between um mental health and people who have been incarcerated, whether falsely or rightfully so?
Yeah, I mean, the conditions of some of these spaces are really inhumane. Like, you know, it didn't really take me none but like 30 some odd days before I like really had a panic attack. Like
Okay.
I remember just waking up out of my sleep, not being able to breathe, you know, hopped off the bunk, ran to the door. Obviously I can't open my door, and there's like a little slot, like envelope slot that's in the door. And
Right.
I remember just opening that and just gasping for air. Like just I couldn't, just felt like a panic attack, like I couldn't breathe, like I couldn't get away. Well, I went in October and I didn't smell fresh air till April. Like I was just in there. I never had an out. Nobody had, you know, wasn't allowed to go out until the spring. So like, you know, our windows don't open, our windows aren't clear. You know, it's just inside. They didn't care anything about my allergies. Like I got sick, like windpipe was closed, like getting help from the what do you call it? The infirmary, like is like well below average. They didn't really understand me until I was suffocating. You know what I'm saying? Like to where I just couldn't talk and couldn't breathe. It was crazy. And so, like, you know, just the conditions itself, it doesn't take long to break anybody. But, you know, you put all these complementary or additional pressures, you know, whether it be like you take away you from your wife and kids, or, you know, saying your mom, or if your mom or dad has an illness, or, you know, whatever, and all these things that are out in the world that you just can't be away from, and you just kind of locked in. It's terrible. And so just on the basis of that, I think like, you know, mental health is important in that, because, you know, I don't know, I'm sure you know, you've heard in movies or something, like the notion of what media feeds us is that like it's easy to just be like lock him up, lock him or her up, or
Right.
lock him, her, or they up, you know. And but it should be, you know, it's tough because they just group everybody in one spot. There's no investigation or time given to conditions, preconditions, or anything like that that could
Right.
really make you worse, because it's not really about habilitation when you're in there. And they definitely don't care about how you are when you go out, because once they got you and you do more stuff, then that's more money in the bank for them. It's that you know, you're just a repeat customer.
Pretty much.
And so like that's it. Probation, they getting paid for that. You know what I'm saying? If I violate, they get me back in jail. And it's a win-win for them financially. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
You just another check.
just another check. And that's what keeps that thing rolling. But yeah, I think, we had a conversation before this about, other opportunities specific to, before that, right? Like protect and serve before any of those things. Like if we even had the consideration ahead of that, as opposed to like a band-aid to it. Like once you end, I mean, that's probably going to be necessary too. Like, saying why not? Why shouldn't we help you get better? you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I really think I know we didn't have any resources, not in the jail that I was in, side of the jail that I was in. We didn't have anybody to talk to. Anything outside of the chapel, we
Right.
had to we had to facilitate. We had to collectively get together. But even if we got together too big, we would be separated. So it's like,
I mean, that it seems like that's the change locations and you go to some communities, it's pretty much the same, it seems. Right. We go through some stuff. All right, we deal with this because we understand together, right? We talk amongst ourselves, but once we organize and we do something that's positive, or we do something that's kind of alarming to those who are in charge or feel like they have power, now you have to break that up.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's usually how it is when the larger or majority of those in power like the way it's going. Like, this is great. I don't really want to hear any complaints. It's great for the higher ups, I guess, or the ones that are in control or whatever. Yeah, I guess like in my mind, I read this thing that our mutual friend Mike posted on his thing about the most alarming thing to society at a time was when like blacks start to educate themselves, or an educated black got educated and then went and shared the knowledge.
Right.
So yeah, it's that's it. Like like when you begin to organize and you collectively build, there's more power in numbers. Like that idea of like a village raises a kid has so many different ways to kind of interpret that, but in the sense of like everybody experiences, there's so much more points of views and opinions that can go in a child, as opposed to like one parent, one one or two parents in a
Yeah.
household. It's
Right.
good to get more. Your grandparents have all this like taste, all this influence can go into a child and make them well-rounded, as opposed, because I mean, I'm sure you probably had conversations of like, if you just have two or you just have one, you're unlearning something to fill it up with something else. Like, you get what you get to survive to a certain point, to where you have to kind of shed it to get more. It's kind of like a rocket ship going off into space. There's, you have certain boosters for certain times, and then you got to
Right.
shed that and kick in another gear
Right.
to go further. And that's not necessarily a good or bad thing. It's just like we all have our journeys, you know what I'm saying? And what worked for my uncle in the
Might not
60s
work
and
for me.
70s might not work for me, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
I can take that and apply it differently for me. Or, we also I learned richly through mistakes too, right? Like those mistakes that he made, like, oh, okay, cool. I know if I sense any warnings of that, I know like to turn left instead of turn right, So
Speaking of turning left and turning right, and I'm not gonna hold you, but what's your relationship with law enforcement now?
I'm terrified still. I was terrified before. I've had family members who have been, SWAT, state troopers, stuff like that. And so I have a respect for the possible volatility of that position. Like, right, like that is, your uniform consists of weapons, deadly weapons. So I can't really assume that you have like you're always expecting a light day. Um, but it's not that it's not necessarily, I mean, given the situation, I could fear. I guess it is about the people. It has less to do about the shield or the position. I think the position, any position, like a judge position, can be abused. Any position of power can be abused.
Of course.
And I definitely fear that. I fear somebody taking abusing that power, the power that we as citizens rightly give to somebody to protect and serve us. But that exchange can be broken when somebody in that situation ends up abusing it.
Right.
And so I fear it. I fear the ability of the human being within the suit. Because when they're in the suit, ain't nobody RoboCop. You can't come out here and turn into somebody else
Right.
and be like, like, yeah, right, dog. Like, you could get pissed off. Like, you know what I'm saying? You could walk out or you're on your lawn in the morning and figure out your neighbor's dog has been, messing in your yard. You've worked hard on that lawn. Then you got to start your day.
Right.
Like, anything could really tick you off or make you have a different perspective of that day and not really commit to it. It's just like human nature. Anybody who does any job, isn't always like, we work every day where we have to put on a mask and take off a mask. But
Mm-hmm.
in these positions specifically, you know, like a judge, that
Right.
job specifically will derail someone's life with one wrong decision made. Like the power of those positions, what I'm saying? And even with law enforcement, like that's what I fear, is like the human ability that we all make mistakes in that position. Like, because it always comes back around. Like once these mistakes are made, like the gravity of these mistakes of taking someone's life, injuring somebody's life, and you on the benefit of them, it's it's the officer first, and then when the mistakes happen, then like we try to treat them as human beings. Like, oh, it was just a mistake. Oh, I just had a bad day. Like, what I'm saying? And that's where the curiosity comes and the fear that comes out. Like, man, like, I don't want you on your bad day out here doing this stuff. Like, what I'm saying? Like all that fear, it could be my day. Just like when we were talking earlier about like how people disappear. Like you never know. Like, so when these people come up to the side of my car, I'm like, man, I never know. I don't know you like that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I don't know what type of day you have, but this suit that you're wearing, like, like you could really have the ability to really derail my life right now. And you can't tell me, that like that's absurd fear, because that's a real reality, And that's kind of how I feel about it. You know what I'm saying? It's just kind of like, nah, because like, when all of these studies are coming out about the lack of training one has to do and this, that, and the fourth, like, if it's not, if these fears that I have with my body in relation to law enforcement aren't taken seriously, in their training and all that stuff, like, then who's the danger more to them or me? And if they feel I'm dangerous because I have a fear, then it's just a reaction back to them, to where they're going to be heightened and more fearful of me when they meet me.
Big time. Big time. That's cold. That's cold. You said a lot. You said a lot. But last question. Last question. Um, you've had quite the journey, and just knowing the man you are, um, you have a long way to go, right? Like this isn't your stopping. This isn't your stopping point. You're not gonna just stay still. Um, what is the when you look at yourself, when you look at your career, when you look at your family, when you look at uh just everything, and you've yet to accomplish everything, what is the ideal version of you look like?
um, that's very interesting. Um, That's very interesting. I don't know. For some reason in my mind, my dad popped up. My dad died. My dad died when I was 4. So
Okay.
for a long period of time, I lived in his shadow. I am the third. He's the junior. So it's like
Okay.
automatically I have certain ties to like upholding this family name, you know. And so it's
Right.
like I was reacting to his reputation, you know, many different from many different viewpoints. There's some people who talk about him and it's like he's the coolest cat in the world, you know. And
Yeah.
then there's other ways where it's like, oh no, he wasn't that cool, you know what I'm saying? And so it's just kind of like, you know, I've been in this ping pong back and forth of like, you know, finding my own way. Like, you know, there's things in me that I'm starting to recognize how people talked about him. And then there's things that I want to take from my own self. Like, no, I want people to know me for me and this, that, and the fourth. But even as you were asking me, like, of all the things that, you know, we both are, we're both fathers, you know, men, this, that, and the fourth. And so like, I do believe that titles don't mean everything. I think, you know, we're capability of like being a lot of different things, you know. And I have that because of my run-ins with incarceration and things of that nature. Like, you know, like I'm more than that. I'm more than this. I'm more than that experience, and try to continue to cheerlead myself to be like, you know, you can be a lot of different things. You know what I'm saying? You're never just one thing, and don't let nobody box you up. So ultimately, um, that's how I want to be described at the end, I guess, like as just me. And then the other things come secondary. So like, you know, like, oh yeah, like, you know, as we do formalities, like these titles come first, you know. But ultimately out in the world at the end of the day, I think I just wanted to just for me to just be sure, like, oh yeah, you know, he was an artist, you know, he was also that. And then you know what I'm saying? Like as opposed to I'm just being one thing. Like I just hope that I create, you know, my name is Sherrill, but I hope that ends up being a way to this, you know, to just fit for me and describe. Does this make sense?
It
Like, you
does.
know,
The first person that comes to mind for me, like the most popular guy in hip hop culture now, Jay, Jay
yeah,
Z, right? His name and who he is so far past him just being a rapper,
yeah,
right? He's Jay Z, like he's just
yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
he
yeah,
he does so many other things that and he's good at them. And then he has like a strong like character, right? Who he is so solid that he's just Jay Z.
yeah,
So I guess that's it. Feels like that's what you're saying. Like you just want to be a stand up guy.
yeah. And that's that, and that's through anything. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's it. Like if anybody know, like if my daughter describes me in the way she describes me, should run along the same lines as you, as my contemporary, as my friend. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
uh, Along the same lines of how you would describe me, like through and through everything that I end up being involved in, or even the guys that I was locked up in would just talk about me the same way. You know, like that is like, you know, being true to myself and everything. Like, you know what I'm saying? And true to myself, which just ultimately goes back to like, yeah, now that's just Cheryl. You just talking about Cheryl. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's
Solid.
it. Yeah.
That's what's up, man. That's what's up. Well, Cheryl, thank you for coming on. Where do we find you? How do we stay in touch and keep up with the projects and everything?
Cool. Yeah. Now I lead first with my name. So it's just Sherrill Roland. Is the Instagram handle at Sherrill Roland, and so is my website, sherrillroland.com.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just anything right now, or it's cooking.
Oh, you know, things are cooking. You know, I wish I had like line chefs, but I'm just the only chef in the kitchen. But yeah, I got things in the oven. I got things on top. Some things in the slow cooker, crock pot. Some things ready to fry right now. You know what I'm saying, and get out.
Right.
But yeah, you know, trying to stay busy. Um, you know, the most important thing I think you could relate to is like out of so much giving and time that we give, you also have to find time to refill. And
Boy,
and so as much as I'm giving this year, I can't wait for these things to kind of get out in the world that I'm producing, but then also more excited to the next step after that is kind of like the refill, like to give back to myself and feed myself.
respect, respect.
Mm.
Well, folks, uh, Sherrill Roland. I'm Lamar Whitby, and that's for Ideal Me. That is a wrap. See you next time.